So yeah, here we go. So we like to talk about natural solutions to truly heal. That's what Susan and I do here at Living Science Wellness Center. And we know when it comes to inflammation, it's a term that's thrown around and everyone's really about anti-inflammation, which there's some truth to that. However, inflammation is part of the healing process, and it's really inflammation out of control and unresolved that's the issue. So we're going to present some really good lifestyle habits, food supplements, a bunch of really good things you can use to implement to really get things going. So, what are signs of and symptoms really of inflammation? You can see here like gut issues, irritable bowel syndrome, irritable bowel disease, even musculoskeletal, like your back, joints, aches and pains. Surprisingly, too, brain fog, poor memory, and concentration can actually be a sign of some unresolved inflammation in your body. And also the ever popular, like low energy, poor stamina, ongoing inflammation robs the body of core energy. Your body is dealing with it. And so there's less left over for us to, be active and be vibrant. So you can see here, just some very common things we see day to day, especially here at our clinic. Many of you may be experiencing them. And so when we're thinking about the inflammation process, again, it's not um, bad. It's a natural pro-inflammation chemicals in our body, anti-inflammatory chemicals in our body. It's the way we're designed. It just happens that there are many modern lifestyle food habits, behaviors, even our office environment, things that keep pushing the pro-inflammation side of the equation, and you have less anti-inflammation. So when we stay locked and loaded in that, 6 or 7 out of 10 inflammation, when it's supposed to resolve to the 1, 2, 3 sort of maximum side, if you use that as a numerical scale, then that's where it's the uncontrollable and excess. So then our body's not in balance, and resolving the inflammation cascade is what is key. And ironically, energy is required to resolve it. So if you're chronically fatigued, malnourished, you don't feel your best, even if you're not quote unquote hurting yourself, small things can become big things. A little bump in the knee can be an ongoing inflammation for weeks and weeks. And that's because your body's not nourished and energized enough to resolve it into a really short period of time. So that's where I put, ironically, the fatigue can lead to constant inflammation. It's just your body's not resolving things. So Susan and I want to present the ways that we help the body to heal that we have at the clinic, food habits or foods and habits. Also, we'll get into it in a second. We have the pulsed electromagnetic field therapy technology at the clinic we've been using for the last decade with excellent results. And it's an amazing way to get the body to fast track the healing process and resolve inflammation. So you can see here in the blood, just as a representation, these are your red blood cells, white blood cells. And so the immune system is involved, and oxygen delivery is involved in getting your body to heal. It's a linchpin mechanism. So for starters, because it's such an important topic, you have the digestive or gut and brain inflammation connection or signaling connection. So because the latest in research is discovering more and more about how the gut and what's going on is messaging the brain, it's not just the brain talking to all organs, especially the gut. It's a two-way street. And oftentimes the gut is sending messages to the brain. And that's where you can get into chronic inflammation at that level. Also, the joints and other organ systems are being dictated to by how we digest and absorb more so than we ever thought in the scientific world. So much of it, the research is at this gut level. So for many of you, in a brief diagram here, the functional layers of the gut, or they call it the gut barrier, there are different layers, And this is specifically more so on the small intestine side where everything is getting digested and absorbed. It's the first sort of 10 to 15 feet, depending on the human body size, where the great absorption occurs. And you'll see the lumen, which is this area in between every little intestinal cell here. There's these junctions, and they're supposed to be tight and control the food particles that you can see here. These are bacteria and different food particles. And the food's supposed to get absorbed through selectively through the cell membrane. And when you have damaging food, large particles, things aren't digesting well, even if you have the microorganisms, the microbiome out of balance, they call that dysbiosis. So you have too many undesirable bacteria versus good bacteria that protect you. All these little things can lead to inflammation in the gut lining. And then bits or proteins that are not supposed to be getting through are getting through. And then your immune cells, you can see this here, like mast cells, macrophages. These are our immune system is at that site, and it's launched into defending mode. And so then the end product of your immune cells going after these undesirable particles is inflammation. And inflammation is supposed to be there because that allows for the resolution of the immune action. However, if you're eating things, you're maldigesting, you're constantly eating things that are improper for your body, that just keeps progressing. And so that they call that hyperpermeability or leaky gut syndrome or pattern can ensue. And this can lead to this low grade inflammatory cycle that can lead to many disturbances, even inflammation in the joints and other organs because the immune system's overcorrecting, and you start getting attacks into other tissues. And joints is quite a common issue. And people will notice when they solve their gut imbalances, a lot of their joint pain actually starts to go away. And so this just gives you an idea here of how complex our amazing digestive tract is in conjunction with the immunity. And so when things are working well, amazing. When things go out of balance, this is where it's happening. So things like lipopolysaccharide, which is a common molecule that can circulate in the blood and even get to the brain. That's one of the main molecules where you're getting this ongoing. Then you get the brain fog. You can't think properly. It's amazing, really. And I'm sure there's even more research, coming out in the years to come that will further illuminate the importance of optimal digestion and the inflammation process. So here at the clinic, Susan and I, we do live blood analysis. Some of you may have had it, others that have never seen it. This is a picture of what normal blood looks like. And you have these healthy red blood cells. The plasma, the liquid portion of the blood, is clear, and everything is operating as it should. And that's your 5 cycles, your 5 liters of blood that cycles through the body. And when you see the blood here, you have these little bits of undigested food. This would be a sign of a leaky gut pattern. And it would be after the blood's getting into the blood. It would be after than what we just saw on the previous slide, where it's made its way through the lining of the small intestine and it's gotten into the bloodstream. So this is where further immune action is going to occur. And that's what creates that inflammatory process. So we use this to screen people to make sure that things are working the way they should. And then we know how to approach the individual should we see these imbalances based on their complaints. So if you haven't had live blood, it's an amazing diagnostic, and you can really see a lot just from one tiny drop of blood put on a glass slide under a special microscope, and you can really get lots of information from a real non-invasive procedure. And so the pulsed electromagnetic field therapy, this is what we have here. We have a couple beds in the clinic. Susan's excellent at the design and putting it all together and taking care of individuals. And so you just lay on the bed. We have this green whole mat is going to send magnetic pulses throughout the whole body. And then we have this small mat where we can localize on a joint, on an ankle or shoulder or something for a little bit higher intensity and penetration. And then what it's doing, because the body is an electric circuit board, you have an energy field. When things are low energy, then your body needs to be charged up, as we said, and then you can resolve the inflammation. When you have high energy, it's in a healing state, but if it's unresolved, that's that chronic heat, redness, swelling, pain, irritation. So the PEMF is amazing because we find that it'll give the cells the energy it needs, that brings in the extra oxygen to the cells, which quickens the healing response, and that controls and balances inflammation. So for people that need a boost, it helps to normalize. And for those that are a little more on the constant irritated end, it actually also normalizes. So we find we like this because it's very holistic, and people are always amazed and tell Susan, well, I feel amazing after just 30 minutes, and my mobility is much better, less inflammation, things like that, right? And so if you can charge up your cells, then your body can choose to regulate itself as best as it can. So that's where we really encourage people to come in and try out the technology and be amazed at how your body is designed to heal itself, and giving it some help is a great way to do it. And the PEMF is one of those that we marvel at on a daily basis. So a couple habits that we like to talk about in terms of chronic inflammation. One of the things that many researchers worldwide have noted, because we've gotten away from like touching the ground, gardening, hands in on the earth, bare feet on the grass or on the ground, and we have, amazing shoe wear. However, the shoes have rubber soles, which is an insulator. Because Mother Earth is actually also an energy field and has magnetics, we have evolved to need that earth, and we can give our positive ions into the earth and receive the negative ions from Mother Earth. Also, you can, standing in water, any type of thing that you want to do. And that's why a lot of people, especially when they go away on holiday, they feel so amazing putting their feet in the water, walking on the sandy beach, walking on grass. So Susan, I encourage you to read a book, sit against a tree, bare feet, even first thing in the morning, we like to bare feet right on the patio stones or on the ground, read a book in some natural sunlight. And all of those things actually bring in the energy for you to balance out. And you'll find the inflammation, no matter what you're experiencing, diminishes significantly. And it's because we are electromagnetic beings. We need to do it. And just in modern day, we work inside, we live in high rises. There's different environments, and that's something that is a simple fix, and again is surprisingly amazing. The other thing that we note, and we tend to have a little bit too much computer time, and also the timing of it, especially you see the picture of the person at night, where the body is wanting to sleep, rest, and recover. It also is when we resolve the inflammation process the most. You can be disrupting the body's natural inflammatory process by excess blue light at night, and therefore also not sleeping great. And the blue light is like, hey, it's daytime, so your brain is registering, oh, wake up. So a lot of people are messing with their circadian rhythms, their balance, by having too much screen time, especially right before bed, especially because most of us are on screens throughout the day. It's nice to have a break and pick and choose your timing, and just having even excess Wi-Fi. Turn the iPad, the computer off, the phone off, get it at least 4 feet away from your head. So, and to be ideal to actually have no signal, because you're pinging the tower all throughout the night. So if you fall asleep with the computer, iPad, iPhone, whatever device on your body, it's searching for the 5-bar signal to have an excellent signal in the tower. And because we are an electromagnetic being, we have an energy field around us, and our brain the brain waves need to slow to fall asleep when you have the extra device Wi-Fi signal coming in. It's like static in the radio station all night. And so it prevents you from having a full rest and recovery phase. Something not talked about very often, but it's very true. And many people find when Susan and I, we talk to our clients about it, recommend just, device hygiene, get them away, everything we're talking about, take some breaks. They're like, wow, I can't believe I'm sleeping much better. I feel less inflamed and less irritated. And then oftentimes the person doesn't need to take a sleeping medication, or they find I don't need to take as much Tylenol or Advil or any kind of anti-inflammatories. Those work really well, but they're not meant to be like 3, 4, 5 a day forever. They're meant for a short term. So it would be interesting to see if some of these habits could get you to lessen even the need for medication and to see if you feel that much better. So we want to talk about foods that will aggravate, um, potentially, depending on your body chemistry. These are the ones we find in practice are the most problematic because they extend the inflammation process. Again, the body needs to resolve inflammation once something's happened. And what happens for fats specifically, there are two fats that we cannot manufacture in our body. They're called polyunsaturated omega-6 and omega-3. Commonly in our modern diet, in the Western world especially, we tend to get too much of the omega-6. And you'll see that here in a lot of vegetable oils and foods that are cooked in vegetable oil, especially deep fried. But you'll find just packaged salad dressings and everything contains these oils. And we tend to have a deficiency of the omega-3 side. So we tend to get more pro-inflammatory action from these omega-6s and more anti-inflammatory action from the omega-3. So in our modern diet, we've inadvertently created this disequilibrium, and you can have anything from 15 to 1, and depending on a person's diet, it could be even up to like 100 to 1 of omega-6 to omega-3. So the more packaged food, junk food, eating outside, eating out, takeout, anything from the outside of control in your home, then you'll find more omega-6 oils, and they're inexpensive. So they're things like cottonseed, soy, corn oil, canola oil. And they also have an issue because many of the mainstream oils in that category have been hydrogenated, which means they've been heat treated to a certain temperature. And that adds more of an irritation and inflammation tendency. And the body cannot incorporate those into the cells to make perfect cellular function. They'll be incorporated into our cells, but they cause dysfunction and they don't behave properly, which leads to a prolonged inflammatory cycle or unresolved inflammatory cycle. So imagine just changing the fats in your diet, better quality, and seeing that inflammatory response in your pain threshold diminish significantly. And that's all within your control. In terms of foods that contain a lot of chemicals and preservatives, even foods you'll find that are contaminated with a bit of heavy metals, that would be things like cadmium, lead, aluminum, and so forth. And that can be from the environment that they're grown in. The soil contains them, and or they're within contamination from things like jet fuel, for example, or grown around specific industries. So when the body is ingesting too many artificial chemicals and preservatives, many North Americans are getting anywhere from 5 to 15 pounds of extra chemicals and preservative chemicals in their diet, whether they know it or not, just by what's contained in many of our foods and our food supply. That's why we're big on eating whole, real foods, things you've made, processed yourself. It gives you a better chance where you're never not going to get exposure to some of this stuff. It's just that your body can stay ahead of the curve. And the foods that contain a lot of this are going to, again, your body needs to eliminate them. So then there's a need to for an inflammation cycle in order for your body to help with the excretion. Pee, pooping, and sweating things out is the way the body does it. So your body's got it, has to do it, and the inflammation gets as part of that cycle. So this is where then daily, if you're consuming things that are bothersome, they're constantly firing off the inflammatory cycle, and you aren't getting a good resolution phase. Other things that we note here in clinical practice, it's not everyone. However, many people are more sensitive to things like the gluten grains, wheat, rye, barley, spelt, kamut, and the foods that contain them. Some people are sensitive to dairy products, especially like the protein casein. So if someone is having issues with this class of foods, that's also aggravating the digestive lining, like we showed earlier, and you're going to be in that inflammation state. Also, excess alcohol doesn't mean you can't have a drink or so. It just means that too much is hard on the body. The body has to detoxify it, so it's going to create an unresolved inflammation state, as is excess white sugar. Again, doesn't mean you can't have a few treats or candies or whatever, but some people that are eating pounds and pounds of sugar in their diet, like every week, that's going to be robbing the body of specific vitamins and minerals, and causing an exaggerated inflammation cycle. So you can do your best to take a look at the list, see where you're eating, how clean versus how quote unquote dirty, then make some adjustments, and you'd be surprised at how solving that can solve digestive inflammation as an example, but then has a knock-on effect of improving everything else. So what are some things that you can do in order to help the body? I mean, just from the digestive piece alone, most of us, if we just chewed our food like at least 20 times per mouthful and break the food down into the tiniest bits, then the digestive acid can break it down into the tiniest bits. Then it feeds its way into that small intestine, and you have less chance of that leaky gut pattern. Fermented foods, we like to incorporate, sauerkraut, different kimchi, other types of fermented beets and so forth into our diet. Susan and I like to have that stuff. It keeps the microbiome working better and helps the your digestive lining regulate the immune portion very well. You can also see again if someone can handle the dairy, cultured dairy, kefir, and yogurt, specific kinds. Miso is a fermented soy product, which is excellent. Hydration is very important. The more dehydrated you are, the more inflamed you can stay. Just think of fire, high amounts of inflammation, water, putting the fire out. Very important. Good quality water is best, filtered properly. And we also talk about eliminating the food intolerances or allergies, because that's going to be irritating your gut and constantly keeping you in the inflamed state. Best to get tested. We do food intolerance testing here at the clinic. We find it's a great way to zero in on things and fast track the healing process. We talked a little bit here about the outside, right? Sunlight, grounding or earthing, fresh air, less screen time. As a reminder, all of those will help you diminish the inflammatory process. And Susan always talks with her clients: deep breathing, meditation, exercise, all the fun things you always hear about. Many people don't do, but just if you can breathe properly, you can actually regulate inflammation in the body. Meditation, de-stressing the system, means your body gets out of the fight or flight mode, gets you into an anti-inflammatory action. And exercise, of course, works. If you do excess exercise and eat poorly, you will prolong the inflammation response. You need to recover from exercise. So that's this kind of balance that we're looking about, right? You want to make sure that it's there's that cycle that's sustained. Talked about refined sugar, sweeteners, part of the chemicals too. MSG, artificial colors, flavors, aggravating digestive tract. Again, that's a big one. The heavy metals that we talked about is something that it's hard to control in the environment, and you may not know. We use the OligoScan to test minerals, vitamins, and heavy metals. It's a great non-invasive technology. Measure a scan with light on the hand. It measures what's stored in the tissues. So that would be something you can look at, and it can see if there's a burden by some of these metals. There's ways to help the body detoxify. And again, that can help take the inflammation down. So finally, some of the supplements we use at our clinic. The goal is to soothe the digestive lining, right? Decrease inflammation and that intestinal permeability of the digestive tract. Decrease the blood viscosity and help break down fibrin, which would be in excess inflammation. Your body is producing a higher amounts of fibrin, which is part of the healing reaction, but you can get looped in that. So there's some products that we use that are amazing. And if you think of its joint, musculoskeletal pain, repairing joints, cartilage, connective tissue. So some of these supplements here, they address all of these things. Nattokinase is a really good natural anti-inflammatory enzyme, helps breaking down the fibrin, helps you break the vicious cycle. You don't have to use it forever. It's just clinically amazing to help the body resolve inflammation. This is a product that we use, and there are many out there, but things that have glucosamine sulfate, chondroitin, MSM, which is methyl sulfonyl these are needed to repair your joints, repair cartilage. And then they typically also have things like curcumin, boswellia, ginger, certain herbs that are known to reduce inflammation. So good products combine all of those. So you're turning the fire down as well repairing. You couple this kind of stuff here with also some PEMF sessions, and that's how you can really fast track the healing process. To address the digestive zone, and you can see some of these formulas, they are about heal and seal elements to help you, and enzymes to help you digest your food, and then heal and make the tight junctions, or the junctions in the small intestine, tight again and not leaky and inflamed. So there's a lot of these around. These are just some of the companies we like and use, and they work great. And if you think about it holistically, if you can solve then what we're talking about, the digestion, the lifestyle factors, you can see you can turn your inflammation load way down and get to some true healing. And we'd like to thank you for that quick half an hour inflammation natural solutions. And we'll stop this and we'll take any questions. So thanks.
Thank you.